2 years later, I'm still disappointed at how Star Trek Picard handled this TNG villain's comeback. When Star Trek Picard first premiered, fans were excited not just for the return of Jean-Luc himself, but for the chance to revisit some of the franchise's most infamous characters. After all, a legacy series like Picard thrives on both nostalgia and reinvention. And when Season 2 promised the reappearance of one of the next generation's most formidable antagonists, Q, expectations soared. But 2 years later, with the series now wrapped, I can't help but feel disappointed at how Picard mishandled Q's comeback. For a character who had been integral to the very DNA of the next generation, his role in Picard felt like a missed opportunity that leaned too heavily on sentimentality while failing to live up to the grandeur of his legacy. Q was never just comic relief. To casual fans, Q might have looked like a mischievous cosmic trickster, snapping his fingers to torment Picard and crew. But beneath the witty banter and smug theatrics was something deeper. Q was an existential mirror. His games forced the Enterprise to confront moral dilemmas, the limits of human progress, and the weight of mortality. He wasn't just a nuisance, he was a catalyst for growth. Most importantly, Q bookended TNG. From the first trial and encounter at Farpoint to the climactic lessons of all good things, Q was there to remind Picard that humanity's evolution was a journey, not a destination. That trial, he claimed, was never truly over. This narrative thread made his return in Picard feel like the perfect opportunity to revisit and resolve that unfinished arc. What we got instead. In Picard Season 2, Q returns not as a mischievous god being testing the limits of humanity, but as a dying old friend desperate for closure. The premise itself isn't inherently bad. In fact, mortality is a theme that fits Picard's reflective tone. The problem lies in execution. Rather than showcasing Q's intellect, complexity, or cosmic scope, the show reduced him to a vaguely defined emotional obstacle. His motivations were murky, his powers inconsistently portrayed, and his interactions with Picard leaned more on cryptic melodrama than the sharp philosophical duels fans expected. Even worse, the broader story, about alternate timelines, time travel, and the Borg, barely gave Q room to shine. His role felt tacked on, as if the writers realized halfway through the season that they should use him for emotional weight rather than narrative substance. By the finale, when Q quietly embraces Picard and vanishes, we're told this was his final goodbye. But the emotional payoff never matched the buildup of decades. Wasted potential. Imagine if Picard Season 2 had leaned into the trial metaphor from TNG. Q's return could have confronted Picard with the ultimate question. Has humanity lived up to its potential since their last encounter? Has Picard himself grown, or has he stagnated under the weight of regret? Instead of side quests through 21st century Los Angeles, the season could have explored the larger stakes of existence and evolution. Even more tantalizing, Q's farewell could have been both cosmic and personal. A being who once claimed omnipotence facing his own end should have been a chance to explore mortality on a scale far larger than one man's death. The collapse of Q as a godlike figure could have paralleled Picard's own struggle with aging, mortality, and legacy. Instead, the show settled for vague hints at Q's fading power without ever grappling with the cosmic consequences. The emotional angle fell flat. One of the strangest aspects of Picard Season 2 was how it insisted on portraying Q as a lifelong friend of Picard's rather than his enigmatic judge and rival. While fans always suspected there was respect, and even affection, between them, the show leaned too heavily into sentiment. The final scene between them, where Q gives Picard a literal hug goodbye, was meant to be touching. But it didn't feel earned. Their relationship was always adversarial, sharp, and layered with unspoken admiration. Reducing it to a teary farewell undermined the richness of their dynamic. Q didn't need to be a villain in the traditional sense, but he also shouldn't have been reduced to a dying mentor. Legacy characters deserve better. Q isn't the only TNG character whose return in Picard felt underwhelming, but his case stings the most because of his symbolic role in Star Trek history. His trial of humanity wasn't just about Picard, it was about us, the audience. It was about whether we, as a species, are capable of growth, empathy, and transcendence. By turning him into a sentimental farewell cameo rather than the philosophical adversary he was meant to be, Picard stripped Q of his narrative power. What could have been a profound meditation on